It's Tour Down Under time, and we are back in Adelaide for the Norwood Cycling Club Criteriums. This is a Tuesday night criterium. It's the last one of about 4 races or 4 nights in a row with crits on. And today's race, there's some prize money on the line. This is only B grade, but there's still a bit of cash. And so I'm going to play it a bit safe today. My strategy for today is to sit in, save energy, and hopefully go for a sprint at the end. Here I am on the front. There is some method to my madness. I did not warm up at all. I rocked up on the start line with no warm-up and decided that the best way to warm up was to just get on the front, do some tempo, threshold, and hopefully pick it up by the end of the race. And as you can see, we're already moving 38 k's an hour. And having taken the bunch round sort of the first quarter of a lap, I'm just about ready for people to come past. And sure enough, they do. And now it's time to hop into the bunch and hide. But first of all, I wanted to get a bit of a look at the full size of this bunch. One of the great things about Tour Week in Adelaide is that the crits fill up, and I think we had about 45 or 50 people on the start line. And having been sort of on the front for the first half a lap, I wanted to drift all the way to the back and just get a feel for the size of the peloton. So I'm sitting out here in the wind, just sort of rolling the legs over at 200 watts, and the peloton just keeps going and going and going. Which is interesting, because even with the peloton this big, I still reckon it's pretty easy to move up and on this track. There's so much width, the corners are not technical, and you can just choose where you want to be almost all the way through until the last lap or so. Anyway, so that's one lap, and I have found myself from the front all the way to the back, so let's see what happens next. Alright, so we're 10 laps in, and as you can see, I'm still hovering near the back. I'm nicely warmed up now, but I haven't done any work at all. And I see Nick Chabrel in the green kit just here. He's moving up, and you can see from the flags that there's a fairly strong right to left wind. So we're moving up on the windward side, but I see Nick starts to wind up, and as soon as he starts getting aero, you know things are going to light up. Nick Chabrel is a watt monster. He can push watts for days, and he's always a good person to be in a break with, because he can work hard enough to make the break succeed, but he doesn't have a huge sprint. And if you can make it to the end with him, you're in with a good shot. But anyway, we're on the front, and I'm only doing 180 watts in his draft, and this definitely isn't enough to force a break. It's certainly got the pace up. We're doing nearly 50 k's an hour. Now, I haven't done anything all race, so I figure I might as well kick it up and do, you know, something on the front. But I'm certainly not going to commit to an attack at this point. So really, I'm just rolling the legs over, and I flick the elbow pretty quickly, and people come past. So, although Nick's attack didn't really go anywhere, it did sort of spark the start of a more attacking race, and it stopped being a bit of a Sunday dawdle. So I'm now going to be a bit more attentive to what is going off the front, and you can see I've just drifted forward to the front of the bunch, and I can see a group going off the front with 2 riders from Team Everything Bikes in the green kit. And that's dangerous, because those 2 can work together, and there's a chance that, you know, with 10 laps left in the race, they might make it to the end. So I'm going to pull through and do a turn. I'm not going to do all the work. But when I flick the elbow here, nobody comes past. I'm doing less than 200 watts and nothing's happening. And eventually, as I come past the start-finish line, I just stop pedaling altogether, because otherwise we're just going to roll through it, you know, 30 k's an hour. And finally, some people start pulling through. But unfortunately, what that does is it gets people attacking over the top instead. And so now we've got a couple of solo riders trying to move up and get across to that break. Now, I'm not going to pull this back. I'm not going to risk doing a big effort. I mean, I know that there's still sort of 25 minutes left, or 15, 25 minutes left in this race, but I still don't want to do that big effort by myself, and I'm not too worried at this point. There's a bit of a wind, but it's not a huge wind, and it's a crosswind, not a headwind down the back straight. And typically in calm conditions, things stay together. It comes down to a bunch sprint. Now I can see people are attacking to get across, but also more and more and more people are jumping across. And as far as I'm concerned, that means that the whole peloton is going to come along. Unless there's a bit of hesitation and maybe 3 or 4 guys get off the front, when you start seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys jumping, you know that there's going to be a response, and sure enough, the peloton's in a nice straight line behind me. Now, at this point, I am going to sit near the front, but I don't want to do any real work. At least not until there is a break or a gap worth getting across. Olme here pulls the parachute, And again, I'm not going to... I don't think it's worth attacking across to this. I want this to stay together. So I'm going to pull a pretty hard turn to try to stitch it back together, not to try to jump across. And as I get onto the back of this group, they sort of sit up and things calm down a bit. I'm not going to pull through immediately. I've just closed to this, so I call Olmay and the JKT kit to come through, but that's about it for this break, and they sit up. There's still a bunch off the front, but I'm pretty confident at this point, so I'm going to pull a turn to keep the pace up, then I'm going to swing off and let the bunch do the rest of the work. So the groups come back, we're all together at this point. There's a few solos who are attempting to attack off the front, and as you can see, the pace is starting to really ramp up. We're going just slightly uphill, and we're still doing 40 k's an hour. And as we come round, there's a bit of argy-bargy, some personalities having some strong views about whose fault a rubbing of shoulders was. But now we're sitting above 50 k's an hour, coming into a bit of a crosswind down the main straight. And the pace really doesn't come down from here until the end of the race, with solo riders sort of attacking off the front and the pace just sort of gradually ramping up to keep them back. I've decided to move myself a little bit closer to the front. I don't really want to be in the top 10 wheels yet. We've got 3 laps to go at this point. But I also don't want to be at the back of the pack now, because I'll have to be burning a bit too much energy to be moving up. So we don't get a sign for 3 laps to go, but looking at my clock, I know we're getting close to the 35 minutes mark. This is a 35 plus 2 race. You can see Toby kissing the camera in the background. And fortunately, I had my eyes up enough to see this little incident before it happened. Managed to move out the way of it, and then the attacks sort of go while the peloton's regrouping, and I'm wondering whether or not this is the move of the day. With a crash in the peloton behind, some really strong motivated riders up ahead. I mean, I've got Nick Underwood right ahead of me, who, for all he's about 4.5 feet tall and doesn't give a draft, he's still a good person to be in a break with. And I can see that we've got a gap behind us. Unfortunately, that doesn't really go anywhere, and I burn a little bit of energy just to get onto the back of it. But at this point, I'm not going to let anything go that might have a chance of getting to the end. Anyway, as a result of that, I'm sort of 5th, 6th wheel, somewhere around there. And with more than 2 laps to go, I'm not interested in being this far up the front. And so I'm going to let a few wheels go so that I'm not risking hitting the front too soon. Now, having said that, there's a couple of riders off the front of this group. They've got maybe 5 seconds at tops. But Frank is on the front, and I see him look around, see that there's a little gap, put his head down and start to go. And so when Frank gets on the front and starts really towing things along, I'm not risking getting lost in the washing machine. He could genuinely take this bunch all the way to the last 500 metres if he decided to. And so rather than dropping back like I'd planned to, maybe another 5 wheels, I'm going to try to follow Frank. He pulls off, and this is a bit of a dangerous time, because I want to move back. I don't want to be on the front, but I also don't want to sort of go back too far or lose too much speed. There is still one rider off the front, and a couple of people are now bridging, and so I kind of want to hold this position. We've had 2 laps to go, and I reckon top 10 wheels at this point is where I want to be, hoping that there's a few committed riders on the front who'll bring those solo riders back. I mean, at this point, this is a really good time for an opportune attack. I mean, seeing Del Toro in the Santos Tour Down Under attacking with sort of 1.5, 2 Ks to go, that's exactly what this is. And as you can see in that, it works. So there's a little bit of chat between these 2 riders, and I think maybe they're going to go for a bit of a compact. There's 2 riders off the front, and there's 1 rider ahead of them. You can see just going around the corner now. And I know we're about to come into 1 lap to go, so now's the time that I really do want to be in that top 5 wheels or so. And so at this point, I'm going to put down some more effort, just make sure that I'm sitting in the right spot. And at this point, I've got a pretty good position. I'm pretty happy with this. There's maybe 6 or 7 riders ahead of me. The pace is nice and high. There's only a solo rider up the front who you'll see just as we come around this corner. He does have a bit of a gap. And this kind of works for me, because if the riders in front of me are committed to bringing that back, there's the bell, then they're going to keep the pace high. It's in single file, and this is a really good spot for me to be in. Angus Dixon comes around. He wants the wheel I'm on. I'm not too worried about letting that wheel go. Angus is pretty good at moving through the bunch, and so I know that he's going to move up at the right time. And he's not going to be the guy who's coming backwards through at the last corner. So I'm happy to sit on his wheel, and now we're into the last straight. This is a left to right crosswind, Angus does exactly what I would have done. He starts moving up on the right. I'm having to do a little bit of power to stay in his wheel, but again, we're on the protected side, and now I'm in a really good position. I do not want to be first wheel at the moment. I probably should have gone ahead of Angus and tried to slot in behind some of the riders up ahead. And this is where my race pretty much comes undone. So I should have been attacking right now to get through, but instead I get stuck behind this rider coming back. I have to grab a fistful of brakes here. I'm in the wrong gear, and now although I'm going to start sprinting again, I've already lost too many places. I've lost way too much speed, and once I'm up to speed, I sort of pull the pin, call it, and sit up and let the people who had a bit better position go ahead and take the win. Now, as it turns out, the solo rider up ahead stayed away. We never saw him again. He was so strong, and even with the bunch chasing, we didn't really close much on him, and he had a couple of seconds gap at the end. But let's have another little look at that last corner. So this is where I probably made my sort of critical mistake, and where Angus starts to slow down, I should have been moving off to the right and really pushing to get into the top 3 wheels going into the bottom corner. I had plenty of speed. I'm moving at 60 k's an hour, and then just here I try to go either side of this guy coming back, but I just can't manage to find a clean way through. There's people coming on my right. I don't want to go around to the left because that's too slow, and there's race over. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that one. A few more Tuesday night crits to come, and then we've got Tour of the Fleurieu coming up at the end of February, so a bit of racing coming up in Adelaide. See you soon.